When a young boy vanishes during a family picnic, his parents are left with only memories and unanswered questions. But years later, a forgotten camera surfaces, holding chilling clues that lead them into a dark, hidden world beneath the woods, a place where shadows whisper and long-lost secrets refuse to stay buried. What they find there will test the limits of their courage and the unbreakable bond of family. It was a radiant Saturday morning, the kind that feels like a promise of happiness and peace. The sun cast a warm golden glow over the sprawling fields of Willow Creek Park, where the Anderson family had decided to spend the day. Sarah, the devoted mother, had packed a picnic basket filled with sandwiches, fresh fruit, and homemade lemonade. Michael, her husband, carried the camera, eager to capture memories of their 7-year-old son, Ethan. Ethan was the embodiment of childhood joy that day, his laughter ringing like bells as he dashed across the meadow, chasing butterflies and making friends with the wind. His curly hair bounced as he ran, his eyes wide with excitement for the adventures the day might bring. Sarah smiled, feeling her heart swell with love as she watched him explore the world with wonder. The family spread out a blanket near a sparkling lake surrounded by towering oak trees. They ate, played games, and shared stories, the kind of simple moments that stitch themselves into the fabric of life. Michael snapped photos between bites, capturing Ethan's grin, the sunlight catching in his eyes. Sarah felt a rare sense of calm and contentment she hadn't experienced in a long time. As the afternoon wore on, Ethan's curiosity got the better of him. The boy wandered off the path, following a trail of wildflowers toward the edge of the woods. Sarah called out, her voice light but firm, reminding him to stay close. But Ethan, ever adventurous, disappeared between the trees, chasing after a rabbit or perhaps a secret only he could see. The serene day shifted suddenly. When Ethan failed to return, the laughter faded, replaced by unease. Michael's smile tightened as he scanned the tree line, calling Ethan's name. Sarah's heart raced as panic began to prick her chest. The last photo Michael took, a blurry image of Ethan near the shadowed woods, seemed like a final whisper of the moment before everything changed. As the sun began to dip, casting long shadows across the park, the Anderson family realized something terrible had happened. Ethan was missing. The joyous day had slipped into a nightmare that no one was prepared for. With trembling hands and frantic voices, they started searching the woods, calling for their boy as dusk swallowed the light. The park that had felt so safe and welcoming now seemed ominous and vast. Trees stood like silent sentinels, their branches twisting in the gathering darkness. The air grew cold, and the chirping of birds was replaced by an unsettling stillness. Sarah and Michael, joined by a growing crowd of volunteers and police officers, combed every inch of the forest, their calls echoing and fading unanswered. Hours stretched into days with no sign of Ethan. The police used search dogs, helicopters circled overhead, and local news spread the story of the missing boy, but hope dimmed with each passing moment. Sarah clung desperately to every memory. Ethan's laughter, his tiny hands, the warmth of his hugs, as if they could guide her through the shadow creeping over her heart. The community's support was a small comfort amid the crushing uncertainty. Flyers were posted everywhere, and strangers joined the search with lanterns and flashlights. But the woods held their secrets tightly, and the last blurry photo on Sarah's camera haunted her nights. That indistinct image of Ethan standing at the edge of the forest was a puzzle piece she couldn't place, a silent cry for help she couldn't decipher. Michael tried to stay strong, but the strain began to show. His once bright eyes grew hollow, and silence fell between him and Sarah, thick and heavy with unspoken grief. The loss was a wedge driving them apart, even as they clung to the hope that Ethan might still be out there, somewhere, waiting. Flashbacks to that morning haunted Sarah relentlessly. She replayed the day in her mind. The picnic, the laughter, the moment Ethan slipped away. Every second felt like it held a clue she was missing. The police encouraged patience, but Sarah's heart refused to rest. Deep down, she knew this was not just a disappearance. It was the start of a mystery that would change everything she thought she knew about the world. As night fell again over the empty picnic blanket and the silent woods, Sarah whispered Ethan's name into the dark, praying for a miracle. The days that followed Ethan's disappearance were a blur of flashing lights, murmured questions, and the cold, impersonal routines of police investigations. Detectives arrived, canvassing the park, combing through the forest with methodical precision, and interviewing everyone who had been there that day. Sarah and Michael answered questions tirelessly, their voices shaking but resolute, desperate for any shred of information that could lead them to their son. The police found the camera Michael had used that day. It was one of their few tangible links to Ethan's last known moments. They carefully developed the film, hoping for a clue hidden in the pictures. But the photos showed nothing out of the ordinary, just happy scenes of the family enjoying the day. Except for one blurred shot of Ethan near the tree line, the edges dark and unclear, as if something unseen was lurking just out of frame. Sarah couldn't stop staring at that photo. To her, it was a silent scream, a final message from Ethan, captured before he vanished. Night after night, she replayed the moment in her mind, scrutinizing every detail of the image, searching for answers no one else seemed to see. Was there someone else in the photo? A shadow? A figure? The image teased her with mystery. Michael, too, felt the weight of helplessness. His frustration grew in the sterile police rooms, surrounded by maps, search plans, and dead ends. The strain was driving a wedge between him and Sarah. Where she clung fiercely to hope, he was beginning to withdraw, burying his pain beneath a mask of stoicism. The silence between them was thick, filled with things left unsaid, blame, guilt, sorrow. The investigation widened, but each lead turned cold. Neighbors reported nothing unusual, no suspicious strangers or strange vehicles. Search teams dragged the forest and lake multiple times, but nature had swallowed its secrets. The missing boy became a ghost in a community that was trying to move forward but could not forget. Sarah refused to accept the official cold case status. Every day without Ethan felt like a wound reopening. She contacted psychics, joined missing persons groups, and plastered her home with photos and notes. Sleep became rare, and she found herself wandering the woods alone, desperate to retrace Ethan's steps. Her friends tried to comfort her, but only a mother who had lost her child could understand the depth of her pain. Sarah's life became a mix of grief and relentless determination, clinging to the smallest glimmer of hope that Ethan might still be alive. Somewhere, beyond the edges of the forest, a secret was waiting to be uncovered. Months slipped into years, and the Anderson family's world grew colder and quieter without Ethan's laughter. The house that once echoed with his footsteps now held a heavy silence, thick with memories and regrets. Sarah kept Ethan's room exactly as it had been. The small bed, the worn-out teddy bear, and the walls covered with drawings he had made. Michael and Sarah struggled under the weight of loss. Their marriage, once a source of strength, began to fracture under the strain. Conversations dwindled, replaced by awkward silences and unspoken blame. Eventually, the cracks grew too deep, and they parted ways, each trying to survive their grief in isolation. Sarah threw herself into her work as a counselor, helping other families cope with loss. Yet, every smile she gave felt hollow, every success shadowed by the absence of her son. On quiet nights, she sat by Ethan's window, staring at the stars, imagining his voice carried on the wind. The park where Ethan vanished became a place she avoided, yet also visited in secret. She would walk the trails alone, clutching a photo of Ethan, whispering his name into the breeze. The community moved on, but Sarah's heart remained frozen in that terrifying moment of his disappearance. Michael's life took a different path. He moved to a distant city, trying to escape the memories. But no matter where he went, the image of Ethan, curious, bright-eyed, and lost, followed him like a shadow. The camera they had once shared sat and used on a shelf, a silent witness to a day that had changed everything. Despite the years, Sarah never stopped hoping. She collected every scrap of information, every rumor, and every whispered story about the park's mysteries. She became obsessed with the idea that Ethan's disappearance was more than just a tragic accident, that something strange, something unexplained, was at play. One rainy evening, while sorting through boxes in the attic, Sarah stumbled across a dusty, old camera wrapped in a faded cloth. It was the same model Michael had used that fateful day, long forgotten in the chaos of their lives. Her hands trembled as she carefully opened it, feeling an inexplicable pull, like the camera held a secret meant only for her. Inside the camera was a roll of undeveloped film. A spark of hope ignited in Sarah's heart as she wondered, could this be the missing piece to Ethan's story? The attic was a quiet, forgotten space filled with dust motes dancing in shafts of afternoon sunlight. Sarah hadn't been up there in years, but on that rainy evening, a restless energy pulled her toward the old wooden trunk where she had stored keepsakes from before Ethan disappeared. Her fingers brushed aside layers of faded blankets and yellowed papers until they met the cool, smooth surface of an old camera wrapped carefully in a worn cloth. Her breath caught. It was the same camera Michael had carried on that picnic day, the one that held the last visual memories of Ethan. Sarah's hands trembled as she unwrapped the cloth, revealing the classic black body with silver trim, worn from use but still intact. Something about it felt alive in her hands, like a silent witness waiting to tell its story. With trembling urgency, Sarah brought the camera downstairs, where she carefully removed the roll of film still inside. It was strange, she thought, that it hadn't been developed all these years. Michael must have forgotten, or perhaps it was too painful to face. But now, with a spark of hope flaring in her chest, she knew she had to see what those pictures held. The next morning, Sarah took the film to a small photo lab in town. The technician eyed the ancient roll with curiosity but promised to do his best. As she waited, Sarah's mind raced with possibilities. What if the photos could finally explain what happened to Ethan? Could they reveal a clue others had missed? Or were they simply snapshots of a day frozen in time, a bittersweet reminder of what was lost? When the prints were ready, Sarah's hands shook as she unfolded the delicate paper. The first few photos were familiar, bright images of Ethan playing by the lake, Michael's smile as he captured family moments, Sarah's laughter caught in the sunlight. But then, there was a series of pictures that made her heart stop. These were not just ordinary photos. They showed Ethan standing at the edge of the woods, yes, but in one, a shadowy figure lurked behind the trees, something or someone faint but unmistakable. The figure was blurred, almost ghost-like, yet its presence was undeniable. Sarah stared, disbelief and hope warring within her. The following photo showed Ethan reaching towards something unseen in the brush, his face lit with a mixture of curiosity and fear. Then came a shot of an empty clearing, the very spot where Ethan had vanished. Sarah's mind reeled. Who or what was that figure? Had Ethan been followed? Was this the key to the mystery that had haunted her for years? She knew she couldn't keep this discovery to herself. The answers might be buried deep, but now there was a thread to pull, a secret waiting to unravel. Armed with the photos, Sarah felt a fierce determination she hadn't experienced in years. The next morning, she packed a small bag, grabbed a flashlight, and returned to Willow Creek Park. The place held too many painful memories, but now it felt like a puzzle she had to solve, for Ethan, for herself, for the family she once was. The park was quiet in the early morning light, dew sparkling on the grass, the same trees standing sentinel as they had that day so long ago. Sarah's footsteps were steady, her eyes scanning every shadow and clearing every tree line. She clutched the photos tightly, matching each image with the landscape before her. She headed toward the spot where Ethan had last been seen in the pictures, a small clearing surrounded by thick brush and twisted roots. As she moved deeper into the woods, the air grew cooler, the sounds of birdsong replaced by an eerie silence. It felt as though the forest was holding its breath, waiting. Sarah knelt to inspect the ground. There were faint marks in the dirt, almost like footprints, but too large and irregular to be human. Her heart pounded as she followed the trail a few steps further, noticing broken branches and disturbed earth. It was as if someone, or something, had passed through recently. Suddenly, she spotted a small, weathered box partially buried beneath a pile of leaves. Hands shaking, Sarah unearthed it and opened the rusty latch. Inside were several old photographs, yellowed with age, and a folded piece of paper covered in childlike handwriting. Her breath caught as she realized these must have belonged to Ethan. The photographs showed scenes from the park, some familiar, some strange. Among them was a picture of a small treehouse, hidden deep in the woods, which Sarah had never seen before. The note was a brief diary entry, describing Ethan's secret discoveries, a hidden world he had found just beyond the picnic spot. Suddenly, everything clicked. Ethan hadn't just wandered off. He had found something, or someone hidden in those woods. And now, with these clues in her hand, Sarah was one step closer to uncovering the truth. The forest around her seemed less threatening now, more like a place of secrets waiting to be revealed. And Sarah knew that this journey was far from over. The discovery of the small, weathered box had ignited a fire in Sarah's heart, a mix of hope and determination that she hadn't felt in years. The photographs inside, along with the diary entry, hinted at a secret Ethan had stumbled upon deep in the woods. Now, Sarah's mission was clear: find that hidden treehouse. The next morning, with the fragile photos spread out on the kitchen table, Sarah traced the landmarks carefully. The pictures showed a twisted old oak, its branches sprawling like the arms of some ancient guardian, and beneath it, a wooden structure camouflaged by vines and leaves. She hadn't noticed this on any of her previous visits, but now she was sure the treehouse was real. Armed with a small backpack and the photos, Sarah returned to the woods. The sunlight filtered softly through the canopy, casting dancing shadows on the forest floor. Every sound seemed amplified: the rustle of leaves, the distant call of a bird, even her own breath. Her heart hammered, half from excitement, half from the weight of memories. The forest felt alive, watching her, testing her resolve. Step by step, she followed the clues, matching the photos to the environment. After an hour of careful searching, she spotted it, partially hidden in the dense foliage, the edge of the wooden platform peeking through the undergrowth. Sarah's hands trembled as she pushed aside the vines and climbed the rickety ladder. The treehouse was small, worn by time, but clearly a place where a child had spent hours dreaming and exploring. Inside, dust motes floated in the sunlight through cracks in the wood. There were faded drawings etched into the walls and scraps of paper scattered across the floor. Among the papers, Sarah found more of Ethan's handwriting, scribbled notes about strange noises, shadows that moved when no one was looking, and a friend he had made in the woods. The friend was never named, but the descriptions were vivid: a tall figure with eyes that glowed faintly in the dark. A chill ran down Sarah's spine. Was this friend the shadowy figure in the photos? Had Ethan been lured deeper into the forest by someone, or something he trusted? The discovery filled Sarah with both fear and hope. Fear for what Ethan might have faced alone. Hope that these clues were a sign she could still find him. She gathered the papers carefully, her mind racing with questions. As she climbed down from the treehouse, a sudden rustle behind her made her freeze. Her breath caught, but it was only a deer bounding gracefully through the trees, disappearing into the underbrush. Still, the woods felt less welcoming now, full of secrets waiting to be uncovered. Sarah knew she had to tell someone about the treehouse and the diary, but more than that, she knew she had to keep searching. Ethan's story was far from over. Back home, Sarah couldn't stop thinking about the treehouse and the mysterious friend Ethan had written about. She decided to share her findings with Detective Harris, the lead investigator from the original case. Despite the years that had passed, he remained quietly invested in Ethan's disappearance, never fully giving up hope. When Sarah arrived at the police station, she noticed a new face behind the desk, a man in his late 40s with sharp eyes and a calm demeanor. Detective Harris was out on another case, but she left the photos and diary pages with the man, hoping someone would finally take her seriously. That evening, as Sarah walked home, she felt a strange sense of being watched. The shadows lengthened, and an uneasy chill settled over the neighborhood. When she reached her doorstep, a figure stepped from the darkness, a man with weathered features and eyes that seemed to hold 1,000 stories. He introduced himself simply as Tom. His voice was low and urgent. "I know what you're looking for," he said. "Ethan's disappearance isn't just a missing child case. There's something in those woods, a presence that doesn't want to be found." Sarah's heart pounded. "Who are you? How do you know about Ethan?" Tom glanced around nervously. "I've lived here all my life. The woods have a history, strange things that people don't talk about. I saw things when I was young, things that scared me. When Ethan went missing, I wanted to help, but I was warned off. People don't want the truth to come out." He warned her to stop digging, to let the past stay buried. Those woods don't give up their secrets easily. If you keep going, you might not like what you find. You could put yourself in danger. Sarah's resolve hardened. "I need to find Ethan. I can't stop now." Tom studied her for a moment, then handed her a worn map marked with strange symbols. "This might help. But be careful. You're not the only one looking." As he disappeared into the night, Sarah clutched the map tightly, feeling the weight of a hidden world pressing in around her. The mystery had deepened, and the stakes had never been higher. The worn map that Tom had given Sarah felt heavy in her hands, not because of its weight, but because of the mysteries it promised to unlock. It was old, the edges frayed and stained, with strange symbols and markings that seemed almost like a secret code. Some areas were circled in red ink, others crossed out, and a few spots bore small sketches, trees, eyes, and unidentifiable shapes. That night, Sarah spread the map across her kitchen table and studied it under the warm glow of the lamp. Her mind buzzed with questions. What were these symbols? Why was this map hidden away? And who had created it? Most importantly, where on this map was Ethan? She reached for the diary entries and photos from the treehouse, comparing them to the map's markings. One particular symbol, a spiraled circle, appeared both on the map and in Ethan's drawings. It seemed to mark a spot deep within the forest, beyond the known trails. Sarah's determination surged. She knew she had to follow this map to uncover the truth. But doubts gnawed at her. What dangers lay hidden in those woods? What had Ethan found that scared others enough to warn Tom off? The next morning, Sarah contacted Michael. They hadn't spoken much since their separation, but the discovery of the camera and the map had rekindled a fragile connection. When she shared the map and the story of Tom's warning, Michael's voice cracked with emotion. "We owe it to Ethan to find out what happened," he said quietly. "But we have to be careful." Together, they planned to return to the forest, this time prepared with supplies, flashlights, and a GPS device. Sarah's heart pounded with a mixture of fear and hope as they drove toward the park, the map spread between them. The deeper they ventured into the woods, the more the atmosphere shifted. The trees grew thicker, their branches weaving into a canopy that blocked out the sky. Strange sounds echoed, whispers carried by the wind, the rustle of leaves where no animals should be. Following the map, they reached a clearing marked with the spiraled circle. There, half buried beneath moss and fallen leaves, was an ancient stone engraved with symbols matching those on the map. The air felt charged, heavy with an unspoken power. Sarah traced her fingers over the stone, a chill running down her spine. Suddenly, a low humming sound filled the clearing, as if the forest itself was waking. The ground beneath them seemed to shift, and a narrow tunnel revealed itself, carved into the earth. Michael looked at Sarah, eyes wide. "Do we go down?" She nodded, swallowing her fear. For Ethan, they entered the tunnel, the air growing cooler and the darkness pressing in. As they moved deeper, faint lights glowed ahead, revealing walls covered in the same strange symbols from the map and diary. The path was narrow and winding, but the tunnel seemed to beckon them forward, promising answers long buried. With every step, Sarah's hope grew stronger. The secret of Ethan's disappearance was finally within reach. The tunnel opened into a hidden underground chamber, illuminated by soft, otherworldly light. Sarah and Michael blinked against the glow, their eyes adjusting to the strange, surreal surroundings. The walls were lined with ancient carvings, symbols and figures that seemed to tell a story of a forgotten world beneath the forest. The air was cool and damp, carrying a scent of earth and something faintly metallic. In the center of the chamber stood a pedestal, upon which rested a small wooden box. Sarah's heart pounded as she approached it, hands trembling as she lifted the lid. Inside was a collection of items, an old compass, a faded photograph of Ethan smiling, and a small, intricately carved figurine that seemed almost alive. The photograph was the most precious. It confirmed beyond doubt that Ethan had been here, somehow connected to this secret place. As Sarah examined the items, a faint sound echoed through the chamber, a whisper, barely audible but unmistakable. It was Ethan's voice. "Mom." Sarah's breath caught. She dropped to her knees, tears streaming down her face. "Ethan, where are you?" There was no answer, only the soft hum of the chamber and the distant drip of water. But the sense of presence was undeniable. Michael helped her up, his own eyes shining with tears. "He's here somewhere. We just have to find him." They explored the chamber further, discovering passages leading to other tunnels, each filled with more carvings and clues. The carvings depicted scenes of a strange figure, tall, with glowing eyes, guiding children through hidden worlds, protecting some, and warning others away. Sarah realized that Ethan's friend from the diary wasn't just a figment of imagination. It was a guardian or watcher of this secret place, part protector, part enigma. The couple decided to rest in the chamber before exploring more, but the atmosphere was thick with tension. Something was watching them, unseen but very real. As they settled, Sarah's phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. Stop digging or lose everything. The warning was clear. The mystery was deeper and darker than they had imagined. But Sarah's resolve only hardened. For Ethan, for the truth, she would face whatever darkness lay ahead. The underground chamber felt like a living thing, its walls breathing with the secrets of the past. As Sarah and Michael rested, the low hum that had first greeted them grew louder, pulsing like a heartbeat. The glow from the carvings flickered, casting shifting shadows across the stone floor. Sarah clutched the photograph of Ethan, her mind racing. The realization that her son had once stood here, perhaps only feet from where she now knelt, filled her with a desperate, aching hope. The whisper she had heard, Ethan's voice, echoed in her mind, a haunting reminder that he might still be alive. Michael, ever the pragmatist, had started mapping their route back to the surface, marking each turn with chalk. He spoke in a low, steady voice, trying to keep Sarah focused. We need to be smart about this. We have no idea how deep these tunnels go or what else might be down here. Sarah nodded, but her heart was already pulling her deeper into the maze. She couldn't shake the feeling that time was slipping through her fingers, that every second spent hesitating brought Ethan further out of reach. As they prepared to move further into the tunnels, a sudden, sharp sound echoed from the darkness, a metallic clink, like a chain being dragged across stone. Both parents froze, their breaths caught in their throats. Michael switched off his flashlight, plunging them into near-total darkness, save for the faint glow of the carvings. The sound grew louder, approaching from the direction they had come. Michael grabbed Sarah's arm, pulling her into a narrow side passage. They pressed themselves against the cool, damp wall, hearts racing. The shadows danced wildly as the light from the main chamber flickered, casting grotesque shapes on the stone. Then, they saw it, a tall, shadowy figure, moving with a slow, deliberate stride. It paused near the pedestal where they had found Ethan's belongings, its head tilting as if listening to the echoes of the chamber. The figure's eyes, a faint, ghostly white, scanned the space, seeming to pierce through the darkness. Sarah clamped a hand over her mouth, her pulse thundering in her ears. She could feel Michael's grip tighten, his own breath shallow with fear. The figure stood for what felt like an eternity, its presence filling the chamber with a palpable, suffocating dread. Finally, it moved on, disappearing down one of the branching tunnels, its footsteps fading into the distance. Sarah and Michael remained frozen, their bodies tense and slick with cold sweat. When they finally dared to breathe again, Michael whispered, "What the hell was that?" Sarah's mind raced back to Ethan's diary entries, the descriptions of a tall figure with glowing eyes, a silent watcher that had lured him deeper into the woods. She had thought it was a child's fantasy, but now she knew better. She met Michael's wide, terrified eyes. "I think we just saw Ethan's friend." They stayed pressed against the tunnel wall for several long, agonizing minutes, their ears straining for any sign of the figure's return. When the echoes of its footsteps had fully faded, Michael flicked his flashlight back on, the beam cutting through the darkness like a lifeline. "We need to get out of here," he whispered, his voice raw with panic. "This place isn't just a forgotten tunnel. It's something alive." Sarah shook her head, her grip on the photograph tightening. "No, we have to keep going. Ethan's down here somewhere. I can feel it." Michael's jaw tightened, frustration flickering in his eyes. "Sarah, that thing, it's not human. We have no idea what we're dealing with." "I'm not leaving without him," Sarah replied, her voice steadier than she felt. The fear gnawed at her, but a mother's love pushed her forward. She stepped out from their hiding place, moving deeper into the tunnels without waiting for Michael's response. He cursed softly but followed, their footsteps crunching on the gritty stone floor. The tunnel walls narrowed, forcing them to walk single file. Strange, ancient symbols glowed faintly around them, their shapes twisting as if alive, whispering secrets too old to remember. As they moved deeper, the air grew colder, their breaths misting before them. Sarah's heart raced with each step, the darkness around them thickening like a shroud. They came upon a split in the tunnel, one path leading into a low, cramped passage, the other descending into a yawning chasm, its depths lost to shadow. Sarah hesitated, her eyes flicking between the two paths. She turned to Michael, her face pale but resolute. "Which way?" Michael glanced at the map, his hand shaking. The spiraled circle from earlier was etched at the mouth of the larger tunnel, its edges darkened as if burned. He swallowed hard. "This way," he whispered, pointing into the abyss. Together, they stepped into the darkness, the ground beneath their feet sloping downward. The air grew colder still, filled with the faint, unsettling echoes of whispered voices. Sarah clutched the photograph to her chest, its worn edges pressing into her skin like a silent promise. They moved deeper, the light from their flashlights barely penetrating the inky blackness. Shadows flickered at the edges of their vision, and Sarah felt the walls of the tunnel pressing in, as if the very earth was trying to swallow them whole. Then, from the darkness ahead, a soft, familiar voice drifted toward them. "Mom, Dad." They froze, their flashlights trembling in their hands. Sarah's heart clenched, her mind torn between hope and terror. Ethan's voice, faint but unmistakable. She took a step forward, her eyes straining against the darkness. "Ethan," the voice came again, closer this time. "Mom, please find me." Sarah's pulse quickened. They were close, so close. But with every step deeper into the darkness, the sense of dread grew, whispering that some secrets should never be uncovered. Sarah's pulse raced as Ethan's voice echoed through the darkness. She strained to see ahead, the flashlight's narrow beam struggling to cut through the thick, cloying shadows. Michael gripped her shoulder, his breath coming in short, panicked bursts. "Did you hear that?" she whispered, her voice trembling. Michael nodded, his eyes wide and fearful. It sounded like Ethan, but different. Fainter, like it's coming from everywhere at once. They stepped cautiously down the sloping tunnel, the walls closing in around them. The air grew colder, carrying a damp, metallic scent that clung to their lungs. Their footsteps echoed, the sound swallowed almost instantly by the oppressive darkness. As they moved deeper, the whispers grew louder, swirling around them like a living thing. Strange, twisted shapes flickered at the edges of their vision, darting in and out of the shadows. Sarah's skin prickled with each whispered word, her mind struggling to grasp the half-heard phrases. "Come closer. Find the truth." "Mother." The tunnel opened suddenly into a vast, echoing cavern. Their flashlights revealed towering stone pillars, their surfaces covered in the same ancient symbols they had seen earlier. The carvings seemed to pulse, alive with a faint, eerie glow. Sarah stepped forward, her gaze drawn to a large stone altar at the center of the cavern. It was covered in dusty, age-worn artifacts, bones, rusted chains, and the tattered remains of clothing. She choked back a sob as she recognized a small, familiar sneaker lying among the debris. "Ethan's shoe," she whispered, reaching out with a shaking hand. Before she could touch it, the whispers surged, growing louder, almost angry. The symbols on the pillars flared, casting the room in a sickly green light. Shadows moved at the edges of the cavern, twisting and coiling like serpents. Michael grabbed her arm, pulling her back. "Sarah, we shouldn't be here. This place, it's wrong." But Sarah couldn't turn back now. Her son was close. She could feel it, his presence almost tangible in the air. She took a step closer to the altar, ignoring the cold sweat trickling down her spine. The shadows seemed to sense her defiance, drawing closer, their whispers rising to a frantic, hissing chant. The air grew colder, the light from their flashlights flickering wildly. Then, from the darkness behind them, the voice came again, clearer this time, filled with desperate, pleading fear. "Mom, Dad, please, help me." Sarah spun around, her heart hammering in her chest. She lifted the flashlight, the beam cutting through the shadows to reveal a narrow, half-collapsed tunnel leading deeper into the earth. Without hesitation, she bolted for the tunnel, Michael following close behind. The shadows shrieked, the cavern filling with a deafening roar as the ground trembled beneath their feet. They plunged into the darkness, the walls of the tunnel pressing in tighter, the air growing colder with every step. The whispers followed them, angry now, their voices overlapping in a maddening, chaotic chorus. Leave. Turn back. Your time is up. But Sarah kept moving, her grip on Ethan's photograph like a lifeline. She wouldn't stop. Not now, not ever. Not until she had her son back. The tunnel twisted and turned, its rough, uneven floor testing their every step. Michael's breathing came in ragged gasps, his flashlight flickering as if struggling against the oppressive darkness. Sarah's heart pounded, each beat echoing in her ears like a war drum. Finally, the tunnel opened into a smaller chamber, its walls covered in the same twisted symbols they had seen throughout the underground maze. But here, the carvings were different, sharper, more chaotic, the lines deep and jagged as if carved in a frenzy. In the center of the chamber stood a stone pedestal, its surface stained with dark, ancient marks. Above it, hanging from rusted chains, was a small wooden chair. Its legs dangled just above the ground, swaying gently as if recently disturbed. Sarah's breath caught. She approached the pedestal, her flashlight revealing more familiar items, scraps of clothing, a small backpack, and, resting atop the stone slab, a photograph of Ethan. He looked younger, his smile bright, but his eyes filled with fear. Tears streamed down Sarah's face as she reached for the photo, her fingers trembling. She lifted it, her breath catching as she noticed something scrawled on the back in Ethan's handwriting. Mom, Dad, if you find this, I'm still here. I'm scared, but I won't give up. Please, don't give up on me. A strangled sob escaped her lips, the words cutting through her heart like a blade. She clutched the photo to her chest, her resolve hardening. Ethan was alive, trapped somewhere in this nightmare, but still fighting. Behind her, Michael shone his flashlight around the chamber, his eyes wide and fearful. Sarah, look at this. She turned to see the walls covered in hundreds of small handprints, each one etched deeply into the stone, as if pressed by terrified, desperate hands. Some were small, like a child's, others larger, twisted and deformed. The whispers returned, louder now, the shadows closing in. The air grew colder, the room vibrating with a dark, unseen power. Sarah met Michael's gaze, her eyes blazing with fierce determination. We're close. I can feel it. We're going to bring him home. As the shadows crept closer, their whispers rising to a fevered pitch, Sarah and Michael tightened their grips on each other's hands and stepped forward into the darkness. As Sarah and Michael pushed deeper into the darkness, the tunnel walls seemed to close in around them, the air growing colder and heavier with each step. The whispers grew louder, swirling around them like a swarm of angry hornets. The small handprints on the walls seemed to move, shifting in the flickering light of their flashlights, as if reaching out for help. Their breaths came in short, panicked gasps, each one echoing off the damp, stone walls. Michael's hand tightened around Sarah's, his knuckles white with fear. Despite the terror clinging to every shadow, Sarah felt a fierce, unbreakable determination driving her forward. Ethan was close. She could feel it, a faint, pulsing warmth in the darkness. Suddenly, the tunnel opened into a vast, domed chamber. The walls stretched high above them, their surfaces covered in the same twisting, ancient symbols they had seen throughout the underground maze. The air felt thick, charged with an electric tension that made their skin prickle. At the center of the chamber, suspended by thick, rusted chains, was a large iron cage. It hung from the ceiling, swaying gently as if disturbed by a recent struggle. Inside, curled into a tight, trembling ball, was a small figure. Sarah's heart stopped. She stepped closer, her flashlight revealing the figure's matted hair and torn clothing. It was a boy, thin and pale, his body covered in dirt and bruises. His arms were wrapped around his knees, his head buried in his chest. Ethan, Sarah's voice broke, the single word echoing off the cold stone walls. The boy's head snapped up, his eyes wide and terrified. For a moment, he seemed not to recognize them, his gaze wild and unfocused. Then, slowly, recognition flickered in his eyes, a spark of hope cutting through the fear. Mom? Dad? His voice was hoarse, barely more than a whisper, but the sound of it sent a wave of relief crashing over Sarah and Michael. Sarah rushed forward, her hands reaching for the rusted chains that held the cage aloft. Michael joined her, his muscles straining as he tried to loosen the bolts holding the chains to the ceiling. The metal groaned and creaked, flakes of rust crumbling beneath their desperate efforts. But as they worked, the shadows in the chamber seemed to grow darker, coiling around them like snakes. The whispers grew louder, angrier, the walls vibrating with a deep, guttural sound that resonated in their bones. No, not yet. Leave. Sarah felt the darkness pressing in, the cold seeping into her bones, but she refused to let go. She gripped the chains, her fingers bleeding as she pulled with all her strength. Ethan's terrified eyes met hers through the bars, his small hands reaching out for her. Finally, with a deafening crack, one of the bolts snapped free. The cage lurched, swinging wildly as the remaining chains strained against the sudden shift. Michael grunted, his face twisted with effort as he ripped the second bolt free, the metal screaming as it gave way. The cage crashed to the ground, the door swinging open with a loud, echoing clang. Sarah stumbled forward, her arms wrapping around Ethan's thin, trembling frame. He clung to her, his body shaking with silent sobs. Michael pulled them both to their feet, his eyes wide with fear as the whispers grew to a deafening roar. The walls of the chamber trembled, the ancient symbols flaring with a blinding, green light. "Run!" he shouted, his voice barely audible over the chaos. "We have to get out of here now." Together, they sprinted for the tunnel, Ethan's small, dirt-caked hand clasped tightly in Sarah's. The darkness closed in behind them, the shadows reaching out like grasping claws. But Sarah refused to let go, her every step a desperate, defiant act of love. They burst into the narrow tunnel, the walls pressing in around them as they raced for the surface. The whispers followed, a furious, hateful wail that chased them through the darkness. But Sarah didn't look back, not this time. The tunnel twisted and turned, its jagged walls scraping at their skin as they ran. Ethan stumbled, his legs weak from months of captivity, but Sarah and Michael held him up, their hands gripping his shoulders like lifelines. Ahead, a faint, flickering light appeared, the first hint of daylight breaking through the suffocating darkness. Sarah's heart surged with hope, her legs burning with exhaustion, but her spirit unbroken. They were close, so close. The whispers grew louder, the shadows pressing in around them, the walls shaking as the ancient, forgotten power of the underground world sought to claim them. But the light grew brighter, cutting through the darkness like a blade. Finally, they burst into the open air, the cool, crisp wind filling their lungs as they stumbled onto the forest floor. Sarah collapsed to her knees, Ethan's small body cradled against her chest, her tears soaking into his matted hair. Michael dropped beside them, his chest heaving with exhaustion, his eyes wide and unblinking as he stared back at the dark, gaping mouth of the tunnel. For a moment, the shadows seemed to reach out, the whispers echoing in the air, before the entrance collapsed in a shower of dirt and stone, sealing the darkness away forever. They sat there for several long minutes, their breaths slowly returning to normal, the sun warming their faces as the forest around them came back to life. Birds sang in the trees, the leaves rustling in the gentle breeze, the nightmare of the underground world fading with each passing second. Ethan stirred in Sarah's arms, his small, trembling voice breaking the silence. "Mom, Dad, you found me." Sarah tightened her hold, her tears falling freely as she whispered, "We'll always find you, Ethan. Always." As they slowly rose to their feet, the morning sun casting long shadows across the forest floor, Sarah looked back at the collapsed tunnel, her heart filled with a fierce, unbreakable love. They had found their son, and in doing so, reclaimed the light that the darkness had tried so desperately to steal. As the sun climbed higher into the clear blue sky, casting away the last remnants of the cold, suffocating darkness, Sarah, Michael, and Ethan made their way through the dense forest, each step taking them further from the nightmare they had escaped. The air felt fresher, the leaves greener, the birdsong a sweeter, more joyous sound than it had ever been. Ethan clung tightly to his mother's hand, his small fingers wrapped around hers like a promise. He had been lost, trapped in a nightmare beyond imagination, but his parents had not given up. They had faced their deepest fears, braved the shadows of the forgotten past, and pulled their son back into the light. As they reached the edge of the forest, the old wooden sign that had once marked the entrance to the trail stood tall, weathered but unbroken, like their bond. Sarah paused for a moment, her eyes lingering on the tangled branches and shadowed paths behind them. She took a deep breath, feeling the warmth of the sun on her face, and whispered a silent promise to never let the darkness claim her family again. Hand in hand, they stepped out of the woods and into a brighter future, the sunlight casting their long, intertwined shadows across the grass. A family, whole once more. Thank you for joining us on this gripping, heart-pounding journey. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more like it, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Your support means the world to us and helps keep these incredible stories alive. Until next time, stay curious, stay brave, and always hold on to the light.